Morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the very last County Commission meeting in February, which seems kind of amazing to me. We'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So meeting documents are available for review down next to Commissioner Heiberger. It's just a reminder to silence your cell phone. And Craig is here if you need a listening device. So that takes us to routine business. I'd consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item is to approve the commission meeting minutes from February 18th, 2020.
Motion to approve?
Second.
And in a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item are bills to be paid in the amount of $2,460,360.39.
Pay the bills.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any comments? Commissioner Barth.
Today's bills include $1.3 million going to the jail construction, a bill that the Lincoln County people will be getting in the near future. We also had $25,000 in medical examiner and toxicology, another $200,000 for jail health care, and $477,000 in highway expenses.
All right, thank you. I always appreciate you bringing that down a little bit because it is constantly, it never ceases to amaze me the wide breadth of things that the county pays for every single week. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item, there's some reports there for review. We have the Minnehaha County Regional Juvenile Detention Center report for January 2020, which is very well done and provides a lot of good information. And we have the auditor's office here for the financial report for January. Good morning, Vicki.
Good morning, Commissioners. Vicki Hewitt from the Auditor's Office, here with the first financial report for 2020. Starting off with the general fund cash balance, ended January at $10,638,655, almost 1.6 over last year. The highway fund cash balance at $11.5 million, 1.7 million more than last year at this time. And then on to expenditures. Total expenditures for January, $6,697,045, 10.4% of budget. Personnel expense at $5,178,135, 11.7% of budget. And other expenses at $1.5 million, 7.6% of budget. So pretty even with last year. Total revenue for January, $936,725, 1.5% of budget. Year-to-date taxes, $364,074, even with last year at 0.8% of budget, and other revenue at $572,651, 3.4% of budget. So off to a good start for January.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Vicki? All right, hearing none, thank you very much. It's good to see those reports, and I know we've got a couple of big projects coming up that we're hoping to utilize some of that funding for, so thank you. All right, so next item are personnel actions. I'd consider a motion to approve routine personnel actions.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item is item 6, abatements recommended for approval. Chris Lilla, good morning.
Good morning. Chris Lilla, Equalization. Yeah, before you today, we've got several abatements. I kind of go through them as a fast form here. The first one is a property that was purchased by an exempt entity, so that abatement I'm recommending for approval. The next one is the Sioux Falls Catholic Schools. This property was a taxable property that was damaged in the tornado, and our appraiser had gone out there and removed 50% of that value of those improvements due to that. In the interim, they decided not to keep that as a taxable property. They're going to use it as their own, I think, a dormitory or something for them. So it is going to be exempt. So I'm recommending approval on that abatement. Item C, that one there is an office error that the taxpayers had called to question their values, and we discovered we had a square foot, either an entry error, a measurement error, or something. So again, our error, we're recommending approval on that one.
You know what, Chris, if you don't mind, I think maybe we'll take these one
Okay,
at a time and
sure.
go ahead and do the
Okay.
votes, just so make sure
Yep.
people have a chance to ask any questions they have. So on the first one that Chris mentioned, it's the South Dakota Department of Game, Fish, and Parks abatement, RDID 16620, 2019 property tax in the amount of $296.04. Were there any questions for Chris on that one?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. If no comments or questions, I'll take a roll call vote.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. So then the second one was the City of Sioux Falls Catholic Schools Property Corporation, RDID 44734, 2019 property tax in the amount of $1,280.86. Questions on that one?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Benega,
Aye.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. So the next item, item C, was the one that I think Chris indicated was
That was our error.
an error that we're just trying to correct. So that's RDID 87530, 2019 property tax in the amount of $629.20. Any questions on that one?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner
I would
Barth?
just comment that I appreciate that we're not getting a lot of these errors. There were a couple years during my time here where we had a few more than this.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Yes, and I appreciate that we make it right when we do make a mistake and we'll own it.
I'll
and-
fess up, when we make a mistake, we want our information right and correct as well.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. All right, so then I think we can take D, E, F, and G together, Chris?
Yep, those ones there, I don't really know too much about. These were instituted or started with the treasurer's office. These are all elderly frees where they weren't either aware that the exemption was out there or they missed the deadline. Again, Pam initiated these. I have no reason to deny them, so I'm recommending approval.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Barth?
Chris, the elderly folks have to renew that every year because
year.
their income, which is a factor, could be different if they inherited a farm or something.
Correct.
And so for them to remember to do it every year can be a burden.
Yep, they used to, if they missed the deadline, it wasn't too many years ago, if they missed the deadline, they were out, they had to wait another year. And then obviously when we're dealing with some folks that are up in their age and living a home, they forget things, they forget this, they forget that. So at the time, it was the one caveat that the legislators put into the law that there's a deadline, but if you miss that deadline, we can go ahead and do the abatement. And it started only with the elderly frees or the disabled. After that, then they've also gone into the disabled veterans where if they would have qualified but missed the deadline, they can request an abatement. So there's only two out there that it's even a possibility. If you miss the deadline, everything else, there's a deadline for a reason.
All right, so then I'd entertain a motion to approve RDID 35239, 81943, 56522, and 36005.
Make a motion to approve items D through G.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments? Roll call vote, please.
Karski,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. We're going to have to ban coffee up here, I think.
Internal possession.
Next item is the veterans exception, Chris.
Yep, and this is one particular parcel. So it's two abatements, one parcel, but it crosses 2 years. So again, a veteran that got his qualification letter that he was permanently and
14
totally
years.
disabled, or her, and it crossed into 2 years. So it's a partial for 2018 and then a full year for 2019, pay 20.
Any questions for Chris? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve RDID 74036 and they're both 74036, one in the amount of $43.56 and one in the amount of $264.08.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments? Roll call vote, please.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very
Thank
much. Mhm. So next item is item 7, notices and requests. First is to authorize the auditor to publish notice to bidders for Highway Project MC 20 2022-07 for mowing and trimming. I think DJ's here if anybody had any questions.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Heiberger?
I just had a comment when we were done.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Heiberger?
Sorry, my comment was last year was the first year we had done this, and in my area anyway, it seemed like the ditches were more regularly trimmed in. When I would, a lot of times when I was going home in the evening, I would see somebody out with a weed whacker cleaning around different, the edges of bridges and around signs and stuff. And so, not that our guys weren't doing a good job, but the person who was doing this last year actually did an excellent job. So hopefully we will have as good a luck this next year as we put it out for bids.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next one is to authorize the auditor to publish notice to bidders for the annual highway annual materials.
Motion to approve.
Questions? Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any further comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 8, planning and zoning notices, there are none. Item 9, petition for compromise of lien, there are none. So that takes us to public comment. This is the opportunity for public comment. If there's somebody here who'd like to come forward to speak.
If I
Commissioner
could,
Karski?
Yeah, Chair, introduce Steve Lindquist. Steve is now with the triage facility, executive board. He is the guy that is putting the boots on the ground and trying to make things happen, and just give a little bit of update from the face of the organization, I guess.
Sure. Thanks, Commissioner Karski. Steve Lindquist. To give you an update on the triage
I
center.
apologize, but we need you to give your address for our minutes.
Sure.
Thank you.
4109 South Pillsbury Avenue, Sioux Falls, 57103. Steve Lindquist. I'm currently under contract to the triage center project as project director. My role is basically to facilitate the development of the triage center and get the doors open. There's a lot to do following the signing last month by the 4 parties of the cooperative agreement that brings about the triage board. The parties being Sanford Health, Avera Health, County, and City. And those 4 parties have, I think, created a very unique public-private partnership to bring about the development of the triage center. The triage center will provide a unique service in our community. I have to admit, initially, I was a little skeptical about the need for such an entity, but the more I've learned over time, we have a lot of good services in our community. However, a lot of people don't know where to go, and some people don't fit into the services that exist currently. I had a meeting with the mayor and with Commissioner Karski. It was probably early fall about this, and I raised some questions about it, and the mayor pointed out to me that he has a listening session every Friday, and 2 things he consistently hears: housing, affordable housing, and behavioral health issues. That was a surprise to me. And the other thing I brought up was that triage centers in many communities come about because of a lack of access to inpatient psychiatric services, and not totally true in Sioux Falls at this point in time. And I raised that. I said, well, why Sioux Falls when there's other entities that have those services for inpatient psychiatry? And Commissioner Karski said, but we don't want to become those communities. And their comments, the mayor's and the commissioner's comments to me, were very significant because it pointed out there is a gap that we can fill through this triage center. Right now, we're looking at the facility itself that is owned by the city. It's a good building. It will be good for this purpose. So we've looked through that. We started working with Department of Health at the state level and the Department of Social Services at the state level to look at regulatory issues, physical environment issues, and things are coming back very positive. They've been very supportive of the project overall. So the request for proposals, as you probably saw, was issued on Friday, and we hope to have a number of entities that will bid on the project to actually be the operators of the triage center itself. My role is not to run the triage center. My role is to help facilitate development of the programming and service and get the doors open, as I said, and then basically I go away. So that's, I think, a unique role and one that will work well in bringing about the triage center. Right now, our hope is to have the doors open in the fall of this year. We're working with the hospitals emergency departments to determine how best to link the services that we have, and that includes law enforcement, emergency, medical transport, the hospitals, as I said, so that they function together well, and the triage center provides what we hope to be is that screening mechanism, brief service, so that people can get on their way and on to better things. So that's kind of a brief overview of what we hope. Again, doors open hopefully in the fall, and we hope we have a number of bidders for operating the triage center.
Thank you. We don't usually take questions during public comment, but if any of the commissioners, Commissioner
I don't have
Benega.
I'm sorry, I don't have a question. I know you from your background, and I'm wondering if you would just share that with the rest of us. Obviously, we all think you're a perfect fit for this, but go ahead and tell the community about what your experiences are.
Yeah.
Brag about yourself.
Yes.
Well, my whole career has been spent basically in behavioral health. I did a few years of child protection when I was very young, and then it's been mostly behavioral health, or exclusively. My first job out of college, I was a mental health aide at the Human Services Center in Yankton. Became a psychiatric social worker there, went and did child protection, and then came back to HSC as a psychiatric social worker, then became administrator of that facility. And that was during the time when we designed and built and moved into the George S. Mickelson Center for the Neurosciences, the so-called quote-unquote new HSC that now is well over 20 years old. Then I left state government and then moved into the private sector and worked for Avera and ran Avera Behavioral Health at Avera McKinnon for about 20 years before retiring in December of 2017. Since then, I've been interim administrator back at Human Services Center and then returned to Avera to work under a federal grant that was related to opioid use and abuse and ways to remedy that. So that's kind of my career path. It's been an interesting one, and I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to serve you and the community in terms of the triage center.
The only thing you haven't been successful at is retiring, apparently.
Say thank you, Steve, for coming out of retirement again and helping us out. And Triage Center, as most people know, has been on the radar for 8 years, and it's hard to believe we're finally getting there. And I'm super excited about the work you're doing and the fact that we're going forward. And it will finally open.
Yeah,
So.
thank you.
Anyone
The
else?
only other comment that I'd make, I think if we all put together a perfect resume and then put it out for public bid, you would have been the perfect fit for that. So thank you for your service, not only to the people we're going to serve, but frankly, the people that have been misserved, if you will, over the past few years.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate your comments.
Anyone else? Thank you so much for coming this morning. We appreciate it. All right, so that takes us to regular business. The first item is a presentation on the agribusiness division of the Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce. Holly, you have a guest.
Hello. Thank you all so much for having me. This is my third presentation that I've been given the opportunity to give to y'all here. And I'm excited to talk about another successful year in the agribusiness division and also introduce a new piece of our team over at the Chamber of Commerce. First, I'm going to do that real brief presentation on the agribusiness division before I get to that. It's very similar to what it was last year. I would just want to hit on what our mission is as the agribusiness division of the Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce, and that is to advance and promote the Sioux Empire as an agricultural center through actions that provide a higher visibility for the industry. And I think it's Personally, I believe it's very unique for a Chamber of Commerce to have one department dedicated to agriculture. I hear that more and more the longer I serve in this role from other chambers, how jealous they are that I get to dedicate my time, energy, and efforts to agriculture. And it's truly important, also a personal opinion, because of what Sioux Falls is today and the backbone that agriculture has been for so many years. So, with that, talking about actions that provide a higher visibility of the industry, we have the same 3 annual events that I presented last year. Very excited to hit briefly on each of those 3 events, and we do talk about our actions and how we promote and advance the industry is primarily through our events, because who doesn't like to get together and celebrate something, right? So we just wrapped up our 67th annual Sioux Empire Show, as I presented to all of you last year. Last year was our first year being the Sioux Empire Livestock Show, so this is technically our second annual being the Sioux Empire Livestock Show. We had changed from 65 years of being called the Sioux Empire Farm Show. And we have a funny joke that we say that we can't use the F word, so we try not to say that too often. So we had a very successful show. It took place January 21st through the 25th at the Expo building of the W.H. Lyon Fairgrounds. I am growing more and more to love that facility, and we are growing more and more as a team and able to best serve our visitors. And we had a great year, even though as you all know, the ag economy is not doing so well. We did anticipate quite a bit of our consignor purebred cattle and a lot of our market and open shows to be down in terms of exhibitors being present. And that was the case for our purebred guys, which is more of our regional crowd. However, we were up in many of our other shows, so it ended up balancing out, and we had a successful year again. And oftentimes people ask, well, if you're going to be so far down on numbers, why do you keep doing what you do? And we say, we're not going anywhere. Our farmers don't go anywhere when times get hard for them, so we're going to continue to stay strong as the Sioux Empire Livestock Show, and we're already planning for the 68th annual. So moving on into the second largest event that the Agribusiness Division does hold. In conjunction with the Sioux Empire Fair, we put on Ag Appreciation Day out at the W.H. Lyon Fairgrounds again, and we host around 3,500 ag producers annually at this luncheon, which the luncheon goes from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on the Wednesday of Fair Week annually. And so it's pretty cool to have about that 3,500 individuals there that come out, and even if they are not an ag producer, they are connected to agriculture, and it's exciting that we get to at least share a little bit of the ag story for them in that 2-hour span. We are, just so all of you know, looking at other ways that we can hit on those consumers that aren't as connected to agriculture. So might be a little bit of a spin this year at the event for those of you who do make it a point to come on out. We really appreciate it. And then National Farmers Day. We're going into our 3rd annual. This year will be our 3rd annual event. And it's an opportunity for us to invite all of our consumers out to the Stockyards Ag Experience Barn, and it just hits on more of what our mission is. And we are so thrilled to continue to promote and advance the industry here in the Sioux Empire. And thanks to all of you and all of the other supporters in the community, we're doing so successfully. Just going to hit real briefly before I introduce maybe a change and a transition that we have had in our office here recently. One more thing I want to hit on is that although we do have all these actions and annual events, we do have other programming and initiatives that we do throughout the year. We have a great team of volunteers and chamber members that really are dedicated to making sure that agriculture isn't going anywhere here in this community. And with that, I know this is my 3rd time to talk with y'all now, and I'm so thrilled because every time I talk with all of you, there's something changing and exciting, and it's so exciting to share that we have a new member to our team at the Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce. It just so happens to be my boss and the president and CEO of the chamber, and that's Jeff Griffin. He's here with me today, and I was told that it might be a neat idea for him to introduce himself to all of you. This is his first county meeting to attend, so I felt very honored to be with him. If Jeff, you wanted to come up and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Holly. Jeff, you couldn't come with a more enthusiastic and
I know.
great representative for your organization. so-
Right. So yes, thank you for letting us present. And actually, the Livestock Show was my first week on the job, so I was bouncing back and forth, and it was very, very impressive. It's my first Minnehaha County Commissioner meeting, but I've been around county commissioners. Where I came from in Wayne County, in Worcester, Ohio, there are 3 commissioners for each county in Ohio. And they were in that county. There was usually a corn farmer, a hog farmer, and a dairy farmer were included with that. And it was a very ag-rich community. So,
Well, great. Well, welcome.
thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. My wife and kids are finishing up the school year in Illinois, and we're kind of back and forth. But I've had a great first month and a half. It's a great team. Last week, Commissioner Heiberger and I both testified down in Pierre for the governor's Senate Bill 157, that's the number. So I hope, I plan for the Chamber of Commerce to be on page with you guys for any type of legislation or advocacy we need to do to make it a greater place than it already is.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. The chamber has been a huge influence in the growth and the well-being of this area and has been a great partner for us in a lot of projects, including the triage project that was talked about. So,
Correct.
does anyone have any questions, comments? Commissioner Karski.
For Holly and, well, for, I guess, the chamber as a whole, the Livestock Show is such a great event. And I got 2 granddaughters, city girls, and their exposure to, livestock and that environment, and to see kids their own age walking big steers around and sheep and the rabbits, and to take them out there and to be able to be part of that. I don't think enough people understand that they can do that. So just the encouragement of the city people getting to know their neighbors out in the county. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And something that we are trying to do a little bit more year in and year out is try to connect the consumer and those that don't understand what's really going on in that barn throughout that week. And we're trying to get them there more and more. So if you ever have any ideas, let me know on how we can get more of them there.
Commissioner Barth?
Just recently, I met a person who did not know there were still farms until he was a teenager. He had moved here from another state and never saw a farm. And I really appreciate the stuff that you do at the fairgrounds, because those fairgrounds are near and dear, I think, to most of us in Minnehaha County, and we need to use them as much as we can promoting ag. Thank you.
Commissioner Heiberger?
2 comments. Jeff is also going to be one of the exec members on the Sioux Empire Leadership Council, which is a lot of leaders in Minnehaha County that are getting together to move projects forward, kind of as an oversight. And so Jeff's just been at his first meeting, and we'll have our second meeting this week with the whole entire group, and so you get a flavor of what we're doing in that. And we're actually talking diversity at this point, looking to how we can move some of that forward. And then also, thank you to Holly, and maybe, I don't know if it's a challenge or not, last year they took cookies to farmers in the field, and I know it was a huge surprise, and it was a very nice gesture to get those farmers when they were out there. And here comes somebody with a bag of cookies, so it was pretty nice.
Thank you. Thank you all for your comments. I get asked often if we are going to do the cookie initiative again, and I keep telling everyone I hope that times aren't as hard as they were last year. So talking about those programming and initiatives, that was something that the Agribusiness Division felt like it was the right time and the right place to do it. And yes, it was a very genuine act of kindness, and it went viral, and it was just neat to see all the chambers from the nation and the world. We had people in Queensland or New Zealand that were talking about their hard times and how it's cool that we did cookies and that they might be doing something like that too. So it was a really neat, and social media is just a neat thing. Very blessed by that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you both so much for being here this morning. We really appreciate you coming.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so that takes us to item 11, which is a presentation on the Carroll Institute. Barry Tushin, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Gary Tushin, Executive Director of Carroll Institute, and I brought along my Director of Operations, Tiffany Butler. Real quickly, for those of you that are unfamiliar with Carroll Institute, we're a state agency licensed and accredited by the Department of Social Services to provide substance use disorder services for individuals, primarily in Minnehaha and Lincoln County, although we have a reach as far west as Rapid City with some of our residential programming. We pride ourselves in being able to respond to pretty much any kind of need. And we also get on the front end of services in that we provide prevention in schools outside of Sioux Falls. 5 outside of Sioux Falls, largest of which is Brandon, smallest of which is Garrettson, and we also provide services in Sioux Falls Lutheran here in Sioux Falls, and the alternative school, Teach Well. And what we're seeing with that population, Commissioners, is that it's not so much a math issue for these kids. It's really not. Maybe 1% of our kids have had experiences with it. But it's more so vaping and marijuana and alcohol. So that's really what our primary focus is in those schools. We have a counselor that goes into the classroom and does age-specific activities, not only focusing on the damages and the dangers of drug use and alcohol use, but it's also skill development and being able to resist pressure from kids that might be making poor choices for them and themselves to make a poor choice. And along with that, then we extend ourselves to individuals on an outpatient side that are dealing with addictions, and can be as simple as an assessment and evaluation, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and all the way up to 19 hours of therapy services, depending upon their level of need. And in addition to that, we offer for the community over 100 beds of traditional residential treatment services, and that's where the county comes into play. And in addition to that, we respond to individuals that have gone through a process by which they need to get into treatment. They're actually adjudicated by the court system to participate in treatment programs. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't do that. They would do just ongoingly in terms of their lifestyle. And so what we offer for those individuals is a short-term pre-treatment residential setting so that when they can get in and access, whether it be inpatient services or other outpatient services, they have a little jump start. And we've had a relationship with the county since 2015 for those services. Back in 2015, we had 8 beds dedicated to that. But what we found over the years is that more and more treatment providers with adequate planning as they're going into this IVC process, the admission and length of stay has diminished, and our overall need for that residential setting has diminished over the years. I would draw your attention to can I pull that up? I'll focus on 2019 statistics versus 2015 all the way through. As you'll notice here, about 5 rows down on the left-hand column, the average daily census is 0.48. It used to be back in 15 when we first started with this program, just south of 11, and now we're at less than 1. So it doesn't make any sense for the county to support X number of beds if our utilization is way, way down. And now the thing that you need to be cognizant of, we're not compromising the community or the access to services. Again, it's about better planning on the front end in terms of when they're ready for release and ready for admission into a treatment program. So that I want to highlight for you. Additionally, just to kind of give you a sense for where we were in 15 all the way up through 19, which one is that?
Is the year-to-year comparison on there as well?
Oh, okay. Well, just kind of give you another snapshot. Like I said, 2015, we had about 11 individuals that we would be looking at monthly throughout the year. In 16, it was 9. 17, it was 8.9. 18, we saw a huge drop-off, 1.2, and now in 19 is the half a day. So what we've done is we've adjusted the contract to reflect only utilization. It used to be that the beds were guaranteed, meaning whether it's gender sensitivity or whatever else, the county was paying for X amount of beds. Now it's just as needed. This past January, we didn't have any utilization. Now, this February, we've had a couple of admissions. So at the end of February, what we'll do is we'll just bill for those days versus the county being obligated for a guarantee. And I think that's, obviously, that's responsiveness in terms of the need and the fairness to the balancing of the budget. So we're pleased with that. A couple of recent accomplishments that Carroll Institute has undergone and had success with is that Tiffany embarked on a 1.5 to 2-year project dating back to 2017. We've always been proud about our relationship with the State Department of Social Services and our licensure and accreditation, our standards of care. But we weren't complacent with just that being a review or an outside look at what we're doing and how we're doing it. She sought national accreditation, and I'm happy and pleased to announce to you that this past May, we got a national accreditation through CARF for 3 years. And that just stacks us up against other agencies across the country, not just across the state. So that's I think, something we've prided ourselves in. The board's supportive of it. It's a long journey, and our staff greatly appreciate that high level of standard that we have to meet every year. And then lastly, as most agencies and providers are experiencing, staff development is huge. It's just really, really difficult to recruit and retain highly trained, skilled therapists. What we've been fortunate enough over the years is that we're able to kind of grow our own, if you will. We'll hire somebody out of the colleges with a master's degree, but they're unlicensed, they're uncertified. So we got to spend the next 3 years in heavily investing in them with supervision and licensure requirements, only to find out a year or so after that, they've got other opportunities, whether that be a shingle of their own or in private practice with other practitioners. So what we decided to do is, can we offer these therapists a little bit more than our traditional services? And so we've embarked on a satellite clinic at 69th and Southeastern Avenue. There's a 2,500 square foot building that'll hold 6 therapists, and we're offering that for our therapists as an option. We're calling it a shared practice clinic. We will provide for them, obviously, the building and all the insurances and their licensure stuff. They just need to do what they're trained to do, and that's the therapy. So we've been fortunate. We're due to open that up in the week of March 9th. And so far, we have 3.5 therapists hired to fill those 6 offices. So it's just something that I want the commissioners to know that we value the opportunity and the relationship that we have with you, and we'll always stand ready to be in response to what the needs might be. Okay?
Thank you. Are there any questions for Gary this morning, Commissioner Barth?
What is a slip slot?
It's a weird name is what it is, Jeff. It's been around for decades. It's in between outpatient and inpatient. It requires additional services and oversight, but yet it doesn't quite meet the requirements for inpatient services. It's in a residential setting, so they get the residential structure and those programs along with their treatment. And I don't know where the slip slot terminology comes into play, but that's what that is.
I'm glad it's not something I asked about before that I can remember.
Any
Like a
other
swing bed.
Swing bed, yeah.
Yep.
questions or comments? Well, thank you so much. You guys do such important work. We really appreciate your partnership, and thank you for coming this morning.
Thank you.
All right, so that takes us to item 12, which is a report from the Human Resources Department on an annual workforce data review. Good morning.
Good morning, Carrie Deaver from Human Resources. I think I'll actually have you go to the next one if I could, and we'll just start out with the presentation. Okay, so the first slide that we have for you is just a brief summary of some of the main projects that we worked on last year. You're all familiar with Munis and the work on that. For the HR component, it involved about 6 months of dual data entry as we transitioned that program over. I'm happy to report the transition was smooth. The reporting capabilities of Munis, in our opinion, are outstanding. It's also provided some value for our staff with employee self-service, where individuals can go in and look at their benefits, their compensation data, go ahead and submit changes for address or telephone numbers. And it also allowed us to do open enrollment electronically for the first time ever. So it's been a great value to us, and our thanks and appreciation to everybody who worked on that. Also, a focus over the past year was recruitment strategies. We continue to look for ways to improve the quality of the individuals that we're bringing in, the numbers of individuals we can consider. We've done that by conducting stay interviews for some key areas over the past year, where we talk to employees about what's important to them with employment at county, what drew them to the position, what keeps them here year after year. And then we developed, along with the city in particular, a recruitment strategy for our correctional officers in the jail. So our thanks and gratitude to the city for their help with that project. Training has also been a focus over the past year. The Safety Committee coordinates 4 annual safety training sessions each year. In addition to that, we offered 9 management-related trainings that we coordinated either on or off-site, and then 5 employee trainings on topics such as ergonomics, communication, caregiving, that type of thing. Compliance for us is always at the forefront. This year brought new Federal Motor Carrier Safety Act regulations that the county is helping to coordinate, ensuring that we're doing annual checks of our DOT driver's licenses. And then with our annual affirmative action plan, we're required to resurvey all staff at least every 5 years for disability and veterans information, so 2019 involved that project too. You know, for having listened to me up here over the past year, that health insurance and the cost of operating our health plan has been a focus. We've continued to look at the financials behind that and try to focus on offering quality coverage with affordable premiums. So that will continue to be a focus of conversation during the upcoming year. But with that, I think you all know from the past few years that every year we try and do an annual review of our workforce trends, just to get a sense of what's our employee base like, what are our recruitment numbers like, and the intent is really to anticipate any shifts or changes and make sure that we're meeting the needs. So I will, thanks Trish. One of the things that we added new this year was just a summary of our FTE. This is full-time budgeted positions only. This is the count and the growth for just the past 5 years. If we didn't have 2020 on there, it might not look quite as significant maybe as past years. Just a reminder that a lot of that growth is due to the jail and a lot of our law enforcement related areas. Otherwise, in the past 10 years, we've been very careful and conservative about the new positions that we've added. Workforce by years of service. Reasons that we look at this is trying to get an idea of where are we losing employees? Is it at a certain number of years of service? And take a look at both from the standpoint of bringing people in and ability to retain them. Looking at this one, 36% of our staff have 3 years of experience or less. So for me, that's significant, but you have to remember that's maybe somewhat offset by the fact that we have added several new positions in the past couple of years. Sorry, we're gonna fight over this a little bit. Workforce by age is another measurement that we use for recruitment and turnover. It also helps us anticipate maybe upcoming retirements. You can see that we're fairly evenly split between staff under 40 and those over 40. This really hasn't changed significantly over the past few years. So there's a slighter uptick in our age group of 21 to 29. Again, we really think that has to do with the new positions that have been approved, because a lot of our correctional officers do tend to be in the 20s and early 30s. Average age for the county, if you're curious, is 41, and average tenure is 9 years. And I think especially in today's world and our workforce, that 9 years of tenure is a pretty good figure, something we can be proud of. The next one gives you a distribution of where our people are paid on our pay matrix. You know that we have a 16-step pay matrix. This reflects that we have, is it 45%, I believe? That's
Yes.
not quite right, 45% in the first four steps. So that's a lot of people at the lower end of the scale. Again, that represents turnover and those new positions that have been put in place. 32% of our staff are at the upper third, and about 23% in between. One thing that we watch is that maximum step on the pay scale. You might remember from last year that that number was really close to 12%, and we anticipated that it would be closer to 16% by the end of this year. We didn't see that actually be realized, and I think that's partially because we've lost some people at the upper scale, but also because people who may have been tapped out in their position have promoted up to other opportunities. So that's good news. And then turnover, this one looks like it doesn't really fluctuate, but for us, a 1% change is significant. From last year to this year, we went from 15 to 13%. That represents a little over 10 staff members. So if that's 10 fewer people who've left our organization, 10 fewer people who are going through new employee orientation and training, that's great. So we were happy to see that figure this year as well. And then one other item of several that we look at is really how are our employees who are leaving us evaluating our services and the benefits that they receive. And you can see that overall, it really hasn't changed over the past 3 years. I think these are numbers also to be proud of, that we're being ranked 4 out of 5 in most areas. It speaks highly to our organization. Looking forward, our intent is to continue our focus on health insurance, particularly because of the rising costs over the past 2 years, as well as other benefits. We're currently reviewing our cafeteria plan document. We want to look at some of our voluntary programs that we've offered and look at how we're administering our flexible spending plans. Also for the future, we want to focus on safety, take another look at the safety manual, and then maybe processes and procedures for hepatitis B and other infectious diseases. Training, we've already started a fairly active year of training. We offered active shooter training earlier this year, and our thanks to Deputy Luter and Deputy Walton who helped us with that process. We have harassment prevention training scheduled for later this year. Last year we brought in Costas Fastas, who did an outstanding job offering some management and employee-related training. We're really excited to have him coming back this year. Another focus we want to look at is our exit interview process. Is there something that we can do to improve that? Are we asking the right questions to really assess what we need to be doing for our active staff? And then the last thing is a compensation review. Some of you may know that we actually look at this each year about this time before we go into budget process to get a sense of where we're standing with market. We maybe want to look at some options for moving forward on strengthening that process, whether it may be buying some outside private salary survey data or looking at maybe next steps as we move through the next few years at County. Any questions?
A tremendous amount of information, so thank you so much to you and your staff. Are there questions for Carrie this morning? Commissioner Karski.
Just one, employment is satisfaction, in my perspective, is not only what you get paid, but the benefits and the work environment. And one of the most important things I feel I can give people that work for me in my business is paid time off. So I'm just curious, do we have a county policy on requiring people to take their vacation days? Or do we have an issue where people don't want to take their vacation days?
That's a really good question. We don't have a policy that mandates a certain period of time off, like some organizations might say you have to take 5 days off in a row or something like that. Our policy is that you can only have 2 years worth of accrual, which can be a lot. But when you get to that point in time where you're going to lose your accruals if you don't take it, I think most people do a fairly good job of taking time off. With that said, I mean, there are a handful of people I know who maybe allow their accruals to go so high that they're slipping. But it's a good reminder to our staff that that is provided for a reason, that it is a good idea to use your time off, find a balance between work and home life or relaxation.
Exactly. And if I may, yeah, it keeps you sharp.
Right.
It keeps you from burning out. And there are, the banking and finance industry does require it for very valid reasons that, it's just a safety check on the organization and make sure that financially everything is copacetic.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, I would just thank you again. Thank you and your staff, particularly for the 6 months of work that you guys put in on Munis. It has certainly paid off for the the employees of Minnehaha County and therefore for the taxpayers, but I know it was a heavy lift during that time period, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so that takes us to item 13, which is to authorize the chair to sign a construction administration agreement with Short Elliott Hendrickson for highway project number MC 18-07. DJ Boothie, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. DJ Boothia, Highway Superintendent. Today we have an agreement with SEH, one of our engineering consultants, for the construction administration on a culvert replacement project that we have on County Highway 110. This bid, I think, last month, or earlier this month. It's for the replacement of 2 culverts. One of them is going to be a new 48-inch reinforced concrete pipe, and the other one will be 2 10-foot by 4-foot box culverts just west of I-29 on County Highway 110. The construction contract is with Midwest Contracting LLC, who we did some culvert work with last year, and SEH has been involved in some of these types of projects with us in the past, so we look forward to a pretty successful construction project. The construction administration agreement is for $28,919, and I'll stand by with any if you have any questions, but ask for your approval on this agreement.
Any questions for DJ?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Barth?
Have you had anybody complain to you about replacing any of these things? Because I was at a legislative event where one representative from Minnehaha County said we should not have replaced the bridge east of Baltic.
These are culverts, not bridges, but I guess the complaints that we do get are more along the lines of, when are you going to replace these bridges or culverts? Not necessarily complaining that we are doing the work, but why aren't we doing more of them?
That would be my complaint too. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other comments, questions? Not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, next item is a briefing from Planning and Zoning on a proposed building permit fee increase. Kevin Hookman, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin Hookman, County Planning Department. So today I bring before you a briefing for the building permit fees to propose increases in how the valuation and what's ultimately sets the fees are calculated. The fees are there to support the cost of implementation of the building codes for the building inspector to go and take a look at a house or a project for footings. A typical project requires a minimum of 3 inspections. You got the footings inspection, the framing inspection, and a final inspection, and it can include more inspections on a larger project such as a house. The last time the fee schedule was updated was in 2015. And typically, the updates in the past have been a flat rate percentage increase across all different building finish types. This time, staff is recommending a little higher increase in finished floor space and lower increases in other finishes, such as attached garage or finished basement spaces. For the average fee increase, if you go to the next slide. So an average house in Minnehaha County is almost 2,000 square feet for a 2019 building construction year. And if we were to take our proposed fee increase, it would increase a building permit fee for $65. The county planning staff has met with the Home Builders Association of the Sioux Empire. They were briefed on this, and they find that the changes were reasonable and understood the need to increase the fees for updating our values. And today, this is just a briefing. Resolutions are required only one hearing, so there's no action needed today, but this is to get some questions out and to notify the public that this is something that's going to happen. The proposal is to have this effective May 1st. So in 2 weeks, we'll come back and do the resolution. So is there any questions?
Any questions this morning? Commissioner Karski.
I think it's important to note that this wasn't Kevin's or Scott's idea that, hey, we're just gonna push this through, that it was vetted through the Home Builders Association. You did look for input, and it's not just an increase, but it's also a decrease in certain areas. So just, for the public's information, this just doesn't come from some small office somewhere saying, hey, this is a great idea, let's raise fees. It is thought out and planned and vetted through the organizations that it impacts.
And similarly, I appreciate you bringing this forward as a briefing and not a request for action today, so that there's an opportunity for folks who are listening to give feedback if they have concerns or questions.
Yep.
Commissioner Heiberger.
One more cost, it's a 5.6% increase, which is $65 for an average size home. But you gotta remember, our costs continue to go up as we staff the planning and zoning, and we staff the person who goes out and inspects these houses. And so those are some of the costs that are covered over the last, how many years did you say? 2000?
About 5 years,
Yeah,
yep.
15, since we've changed them. So we have increased costs too, so.
Anything else, Commissioner Benega?
One of the things that I'm always a little surprised at, and I know it's not something that we can always control, but it seems like every year we hear about more and more people who build something without a building permit. I think that's part of our cost of frankly doing business, unfortunately, and I'm wondering if we can track that and how it has changed over the last couple, 3 years, or people who are avoiding building permits that really affect the people who are being good citizens and getting those permits. I'm always shocked by the number of people that we send notices to that frankly have avoided the system.
Sure. If you recall a few years ago when we did image updating, we did have a system to find buildings that were constructed without permits. We haven't done that for a few years. We haven't gotten new imagery, but our building inspector is pretty good at canvassing the entire county because he's out all the time doing inspections. So if he drives by and says, that looks like new wood on that deck, and we didn't issue a permit, he'll send letters or reach out to those people. I guess I don't know a percentage-wise of how many of those permits. They're usually small projects such as a new deck or a replacement deck, or another common thing we see are the 12 by 20 sheds that are pre-built on skids, and they go placed on a property a foot off the property line, which then they have to move it a little bit or to meet setbacks, that sort of thing. So.
It just,
Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I'm going to give a defense for the people who don't get them, because I was one of them. And that was, it just sometimes, it depends on if you're building it yourself and you don't. I mean, I've gone to the planning before and said, we're updating this part, do I need a building permit? And sometimes people don't understand. We built a building, and my husband was responsible to get it for it, and we thought the contractor was getting it. And so that happens. And actually, the building inspector drove by and stopped in and said, you guys don't have a building permit. Surprise to me. And there is a penalty. You pay double the cost on your building fee or your building permit if you don't get it. So I've been caught and unintentionally had done it. So
What it was your husband's fault?
it really was, because I didn't read the contract. It's his building. It's his contract.
We all
Wasn't
clearly
my
heard her
fault.
say that it was her husband's fault. So. Anything else?
And we're going through true confessions.
Yeah.
But, is there a way to relate some of this discussion with the building contractors a little bit by saying, you have some responsibility with building permits also, and I think generally speaking, they're all very good. It's, as Cindy's described, it's the self-build issues that probably are the biggest part, but it just seems to me that when you got people who are avoiding the system, we need to be concerned about that also.
Sure. No, and similarly, each contractor is different. Sometimes the contractor tells the homeowner to go get the permit or vice versa. So yeah, that can get confusing to the individual as well.
I just have a problem with somebody who says they have a 12 by 20 shed. It sounds like a garage to me. Yeah. But anyway.
Commissioner Barth?
I think that program that we have is Change Finder. Isn't that what finds the buildings that are not on record? But I do appreciate the fact that people will have some time And those of you watching, if you have a concern, let's bring it before we take final action. But I also appreciate that these weren't numbers that were picked out of the sky and put in here, that there was some comparative shopping with the city of Sioux Falls, et cetera. And thank you.
All right, anyone else? Thank you very much. So the next item is to authorize the chair to sign an agreement with the Tri-State Nursing Enterprises for Juvenile Detention Center Nursing Services. Jamie Gravitt, good morning.
Good morning, Jamie Gravitt, Juvenile Detention Center. I've presented a contract to replace our nursing services that we've been without since the end of December. It's been a long, hard process trying to find someone to do this. We've vetted 5 different companies, and this is the only one that would give us a contract. It is a significant increase over what we've had in the past, about $15 more an hour. I'm asking that you approve this, please, and they tell us they have a nurse ready to hire that is from Sioux Falls, so we're looking forward to getting a new nurse started.
Comments or questions for Jamie? Commissioner Benniga.
I would just tell you in my real job, supply and demand is an issue in the healthcare industry. And I think that frankly, it says a lot that we pursued 5 organizations and only had 1 contract offer. So I would support this agreement.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is the legislative update. Morning, Craig.
Good morning, Craig Dewey, Commission Office. This week in the legislature on Thursday will be crossover day in the legislature, which means that is when a bill must pass out of its chamber of origin. There's certainly a large number of bills this session, approximately 500, so it is very possible that you'll see the House in particular each year. So they can stay late. Some years it's as late as 10 p.m. to clear their calendar. A few highlights that I would like to mention over the past week. I believe last week we discussed Senate Bill 157, which would deal with different planning and zoning processes and appeals for counties. And Commissioner Heiberger traveled up to Pierre to testify for that bill as president of the SDACC. She did a great job. The bill was fortunate to pass and is moving through the process. There were a number of organizations that weighed in on both sides. So that bill ended up passing the full Senate in a 28-3 vote, so it's headed over to the House, and we'll be hearing more about that. The other bill that I would like to draw a lot of attention to is something that actually came up at the last minute on Friday. When I got home from work, there was an email sent out about Senate Bill 79. It had been hog-housed, which means the original language of the bill was removed and entirely new language was dropped in. And that would have been a tremendous cost shift to counties regarding the replacement of culverts in townships. And currently, townships have to cover the vast majority of the cost for the culverts. If Senate Bill 79 was enacted, it would have shifted 93 to 99% of the cost for culvert replacements to counties, but townships could just say, hey, I want this culvert replaced, and the county would have been forced to expend the dollars to replace that culvert. Right now, we do have a successful program currently in place with townships and our highway department that is working, and the townships are happy with that. And so in conversations that I had with DJ Boothie, our highway superintendent, he provided a lot of helpful background information on Friday evening, and then exchanged some emails on Saturday with Commissioner Bender and Commissioner Heiberger, and then got up early on Monday morning to prepare to testify. Thankfully, in partnership with SDACC, Brown County Highway Superintendent testified. I testified by phone. Thankfully, I didn't have to travel to Pierre for that. And then I believe there was another individual who testified as well. The bill was defeated in a 5-2 vote on committee, so that saved what could be a tremendously burdensome cost shift to Minnehaha County, given that we have approximately 200 culverts that would have fit the definition of over 16 square feet under this bill.
Madam Chair, I just want to comment that there are never any proposals to let the state pay for all those bridges and culverts. They always want to push it off on us.
That would be an interesting conversation, certainly, if that bill came up. The other bill that I just wanted to highlight your attention on, because I know that you signed a letter of support, is Senate Bill 70. That is the Spanish language driver's license exam for the written portion. That bill is still awaiting a hearing in the other chamber in the House. I know that the Sioux Falls Chamber, who is the lead proponent on that bill, continues to be in conversation with the governor's office. And while conversations are ongoing, they are moving in the right direction. So we'll continue to monitor that. Given that I've updated you on a few of those bills, I'd be happy to update you on anything else if you have questions about it.
Questions? Commissioner Heiberger?
I'm just wondering if you know of anything that happened on Senate Bill 2 was supposed to be, which is the 211 services that was heard in Health and Human Services on the 21st. Is there anything new on that?
So, yes, there have been updates. It was originally assigned to Health and Human Services. It got referred to Senate Appropriations and passed out in a 6-1 vote, and then recently passed the full Senate in a 33-2 vote. So it is headed over to the House with strong support on that end. And for individuals who don't know what 211 is, it's an alternative to 911 for those non-emergency calls if people are looking to get connected with different community resources, such as finding daycare providers, or during flooding, 211 provided integral help for people calling wondering, hey, I've got water in my basement, what do I do? That helped keep 911 lines free for the actual emergency calls where there were potentially life-threatening situations.
I think another reason they're pushing it too is all the mental health studies that they did this year on summer studies, that 211 was found to be a very helpful resource for smaller communities where somebody is having trouble. They can call 211 instead of calling 911 and find out where the services are. So I think that probably is another one of their push statements, that was a part of their summer studies. So, and I have another question.
Commissioner Heiberger?
I have another question or comment, and that was, I did get a phone call this morning that the South Dakota Association of County Commissioners was going to be opposed to the vaccination bill. They've been asked by several different organizations and just called to check and see, you know, how the association basically is going to oppose it this morning, so.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, Craig, we really appreciate the work that you do, just the example that you gave with the bill that was hog-housed. I think folks that are not directly dependent on government funding for things don't necessarily pay the close attention that we need to pay at the county level, because things change very rapidly with very little warning at times. And so we really are thankful that we have your resources available to us to keep track of these things so that we can get out in front of issues that would directly affect taxpayers here in Minnehaha County. So thank you.
Thank you. Happy to do it.
All right. So that takes us to item 17, liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports this morning? Commissioner Heiberger.
Commissioner Barth and I will be traveling to Washington, D.C. this week to go to the National Association of Counties organization, where I sit on the Justice and Safety Committee, and we'll be attending a day of meetings on that before we start up on the convention. Jeff, do you have any other?
Well, I believe the next week at this hour, we might be listening to Donald Trump, who will be addressing our conference. Additionally, General Colin Powell will be talking to us, and some others. And I know I heard Amy Klobuchar there one year, which she was pretty good. But I have another liaison report.
All right, Commissioner Barth.
Last night we had the planning and zoning here, and we did approve the roller coaster at Wild Water West. We'll see if it gets appealed. There was one person who was not enamored of the idea, but we turned down two items, one of which the proponent was not there, and his property currently is in violation of county ordinance. And so, wow, what were we supposed to do if he's in violation and doesn't come to the meeting? In any case, we also turned down a proposal, and I feel sad about it, but it was by the Sorum family in Renner. They wanted to build a commercial subdivision west of their locker. And of course, that's like in the floodplain. And the floodplain, which is being redrawn by FEMA, and some of the neighbors already, their houses were either destroyed or heavily damaged by water, and it wasn't necessarily, I mean, if you're building a row of storage facilities, it's not gonna slow the water down. It's gonna back it up. And I know the neighbors were saying that even on the east side of Highway 115, that they had flooding because of the ice in the culverts that was blocking the flow. And a couple of them had their houses sinking several inches into the ground after this. It's very sandy there, but I hate to deny the Sorums the ability to use the land, the property that they own, but it's just not appropriate for anything besides maybe rice paddies. I'm not sure.
Anyone else? All right, well, we appreciate the work that planning and zoning does. You guys deal with a lot of diverse and interesting and sometimes controversial issues. So to you and everyone else who serves on that committee, we really appreciate it.
We have a good crew.
All right, new business, Commissioner Karski?
Came to mind while Commissioner Barth was talking that him and Commissioner Heiberger are going to be gone next Tuesday, which we have a building committee meeting that morning. So just for discussion or consideration that we may have to postpone that meeting because there's some pretty significant things that are going on, and I think it would be best if we had everybody there. So I don't know if it's the right place for new business, but just an observation that we might have to have that move a meeting.
Well, we can certainly talk about it. I'm not sure, actually, that next week's building committee was going to have a lot of, I mean, certainly no decision-making points. I think it was updates on what our various subcommittees have been doing, but we can certainly look at the calendar and see if there's another opportunity for that. Okay, anything else under new business?
Next week, it'll take a unanimous vote to adjourn.
Problem. Old business. Any old business? If not, I'd entertain a motion to recess the Minnehaha County Commission meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We managed to get it done unanimously this time. And we will reconvene, why don't we try for about 10:15? That gives us about 10 minutes. Thank you. Yeah, 10:15. I don't know what I said.